Hey, this is James with Bana Land Company, and I'm here tonight with Jason. He's the president and founder of Bana Land Company. And a lot of y'all have been reaching out to us about how can I sell my land in 2025. So I've invited Jason to come on tonight. He's going to go through some of the do's and don'ts of how to do that, some of the pitfalls that you might run into, and if more than anything, just to bring peace to your heart and your mind about the process of doing that. So I just want to start and say, welcome, Jason.
Awesome to be here, James. Excited to talk about land. It's one of my passions.
You know what? It is a passion of mine, and it kind of goes with my last name, so I have to be passionate about that, right?
Yeah.
So I tell you what, one of the questions that we've gotten is people want to know, can you sell land for yourself without actually using a realtor?
Yeah, good question. So you absolutely can. I know with houses in the culture that we live in, it's very odd. Once in a while you see a for sale by owner and maybe they use like an attorney, a real estate attorney, or a website. It used to be more popular. I think my parents tried to do that years ago and they couldn't do it, so they ended up hiring a realtor. But a lot of times people just assume that you need to be a realtor or have a realtor in order to sell your land. And the short answer is that no, you do not need a realtor. Um, you don't have to have a realty license to buy or to sell if it's for yourself. So if you own property, James, let's just give an example. You have 20 acres and you want to sell it to me, to Bana Land Company, or me, Jason. James is Seller and I'm Mr. Buyer. For that transaction, we don't need any realtor, any licensing necessary if we have a direct party. It's a direct sale from you to me. It's very simple. Um, Sometimes people use realtors because there's a lot of showings, there's a lot of inspections, there's a lot of things with houses that could go wrong. There's quite a few disclaimers that the states require, lead-based paint, things like this. If you've ever bought a house, you know. Um, and that makes perfect sense. But when it comes to land is a very simple transaction. We're most of the time, this is just rural vacant land. There's not even anything on it. And so it's actually a very simple document process to do it. But you can sell with a realtor. You could also sell directly.
Okay. Well, and so there is a difference between the land and the house that you were just speaking of. So a lot of folks don't know that. But how hard would it be to sell the land myself? If that's something I want to do, I want to sell it myself. What am I looking at? How am I going to get into today's market to do that?
Yeah, James. So you definitely can sell yourself. And one of the challenges that happens, a lot of people that we've worked with, we bought land from, will tell us, maybe they live out of state or they live a little further away from the property. They just don't get out to it anymore. And they've called a few realtors, but their property, it's $100,000 property, a $50,000 property. It doesn't have that commission basis. The realtors want to sell the $600,000 houses where they're making a commission rather than haul people out and walk around a, piece of vacant land all day and make a very small commission. And so sometimes the realtors aren't motivated. So we find sellers that, they've got a property, no one really wants to help them sell it, so they've got to sell it themselves. But there's several things that you can do and keep in mind. Um, I would say it's not hard, but it's not easy either. So some of the challenges, I'll start with the challenges. And first of all, what kind of condition is your land in? So let's be honest, there are multiple factors that affect the value of a land. It's kind of like a house. If the house is dumpy and needs a bunch of remodeling, you're not going to get the best price as if it was all redone. Same can be true of land. If the land is all overgrown, you can't even walk through it, there's no driveway or access any way to get on it, see it, it can be hard to get people the vision. So sometimes you need to maybe hire some people to come in with some heavy equipment and do some brush clearing, brush hogging, bulldozing. Um, if you can afford that, that's definitely going to help the value and it's going to help the sellability because it's going to be easier to show to people. Check things like access roads and junk. Junk is a big one we've had in Texas, Missouri, some of the states we work in, Arkansas. Sometimes no one's been out there in a long time and there's been some tweakers out there, you know, some sort of meth lab on there. I mean, it happens. There's just junk. Sometimes it's just junk.
Wow.
Neighbors have been dumping junk in a ditch. And that could be a little bit of a detriment when people go out and look at the property because they're thinking of the cleanup. So those are things to consider first of all. And then another big one is we live in an online world, James. So how are buyers, potential buyers, going to be able to find your property, right? Photos are very important. So if you can go out and just snap a few photos on your phone, that's okay. That's better than nothing. You need some sort of aerial map and some location and some photos. But with land, it's not like you're looking at bedrooms or kitchens that you can see off a phone. So very important to get good marketing photos. I suggest things like drone flyovers and professional photographs. That really help people maybe that live further away and are searching for land in an area to see it. It can kind of call their attention. Signs also. You can put signs in front of the property at the road to turn into the property. That always helps maybe neighbors to see that you want to sell it. A couple other little challenges that kind of come up when it's talking about selling on your own. Let's say that, the property's in good shape and you've got a potential buyer. Typically you have to deal with a lot of buyer inquiries. In today's market, I call it like 50 to 1. There's usually like 50 people that reach out about a property that we're wanting to sell to get one buyer. Sometimes it's more. And I know you know this, James, as well. You've seen that with some of your properties. And so if that's the case, it takes a lot of time to respond to those people. You want to email them, call them, talk to them, and these conversations might take 10 or 15 minutes for you to find out that they're not a buyer. So it does take some time, and then coordinating how, to show them the property. So that's something to keep in mind. And your final thing is that you've got to make sure the paperwork, the purchase agreement and the title closing paperwork is accurate. So I definitely don't suggest you do that yourself. If you do come to an agreement on price, take it to an attorney and have them do the paperwork for you. If you've never done it before, just to make sure everything is right and tight, because you need to have purchase agreements, legal descriptions. There's a few things you need to put on that document process just to make sure that it's right.
You know, there's a couple of those challenges that you're talking about. The legal agreements. I know before I got into this business, that was something that would have intimidated me. Cleaning up junk, I can handle that. The tire kickers,
Mhm.
they can wear on you. And you did mention a few things in there that brings me to my third point is what affects the price of my land? How can I know what my land is worth?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to jump into that, but before I do, to finish what we're talking about in challenges, I don't
Yeah,
want our listeners to think that it's impossible. So I want to give them a few free resources if for whatever reason you'd like to take a swing at that. A
excellent.
few free resources. You can list yourself on Zillow. It's not easy to get for sale by owner live on Zillow, but like Zillow, Redfin, you can do that. There's also things that are called broker lists, which are MLS listings without actually having a broker. So you could do that. Um, you can also, uh, if you want to get photos, you could hire a droner. They're not in every area, but if you go to droners.io, they have a registry of droners that could go out and maybe do some drone photography for you. Another thing is you could order online some yard signs or bandit signs and stick them in front, like, for sale signs. Those are all simple things, and they could potentially help sell. Now,
Okay.
price. That's the question, right? That's what you'd ask. What affects the price? Was that your question, James?
Yeah. So what's going to affect the price of my land?
We always hear the same one, right? Um, it's, well, my neighbor down the road, they got XYZ per acre for their land last year. And people talk, someone sold a piece of property and somehow the word got out and everyone thinks their property is worth that. So let's just say somebody sold a piece of property. Maybe it was right on the edge of town, right next to Walmart, perfect development commercial site, and they sold that property for $1 million. And so suddenly everyone within a 10-mile radius thinks that their farm is worth $1 million. The long and short of it is it just isn't. There are multiple factors that affect land values. Now, sometimes obviously location and size are the top ones. Everyone's heard location, location, location with real estate. So
Yeah.
if you're in a really good location, like right next to a highway, in the path of growth, business and development happening around. Now, one thing to consider in location is, do you have the zoning? So you could be right next to Walmart, but if your property is only zoned residential, you can't put a business on there. The buyers are not going to offer as much because the end is just to put a house on it, not some business that produces a lot of money. So the value play changes. But size and location are important. If your property is on the other side of the mountain and it's down, 2 miles of dirt road, and this is pretty common with stuff that we buy. Obviously, it's not going to be worth the same amount as if it's on a county maintained paved road across from a gas station. I mean, it location and the size. And once again, 100-acre farm over, a 2-acre parcel. What's the end buyer going to use it for? What can they do with it? Sometimes when you get into smaller lots, people might think that 2 to 5 acres is a lot. And in some counties, you're limited even on septic systems you can put on a property like that. So size is important. Another thing is access. So I mentioned, if it's down a dirt road, it's not as good as a paved road, but the access is a direct factor that affects the price. So do you have access and road frontage, particularly on a paved road? Because not everybody wants to do the gravel road, getting a flat tire every month deal. A lot of people don't. There's other things, what we call four-wheel drive access, which is those little bitty farm easement roads that, if it rains, you can't get in without a four-wheel drive. And maybe if it snows, you can't either. You probably don't want to live on the end of that road, right? So maybe for a little hunting property, but it's going to affect the value of the land. So access is a big deal.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, I've got an easement, but it's, this little narrow road that has to be maintained that goes a mile back. If the county is maintaining the road and it's very easy to get on the land, it goes way up. We work with a lot of sellers that have landlocked property, and landlocked property is essentially worthless. In some cases, things can be done to gain access, but it's not worth very much at all. Um, Another factor is layout. So is it flat and buildable? Is it in a floodplain? When they're flat, sometimes they're even depressed and they have a floodplain where water will accumulate. You can't build on that. And, if it rains heavy, you can't do much with it. Is it on a mountainside? Is it hilly? Some of the stuff gets very hilly and steep, past usually about a 20% grade, 25% grade max. You can't build even a walkout or even with special structures. So what do you do with it? So
Yeah.
layout really matters. And then a final thing is just utilities and improvements. So, does the property already have a septic system, a well, a power pole right there? Maybe you had a cabin on it or some sort of improvement, a pole barn, a shed. Those type of improvements will directly affect the value because me or the guy that buys it, they go, oh, I don't have to go and hire a well digger. I don't have to go and put a gravel driveway in. I don't have to go and negotiate the power poles. And so those things are definitely factors that factor in the value of your property. Um, Final couple little things is just market conditions. Like, you know, a lot of people right after COVID, there was kind of a boom in land and everything was up. Everyone wanted land out in the country, and that's cooled off in the real estate market in 2025. So there are some areas that are hot still, and there's more demand, and there are other areas that are just cool and there's not as many buyers. And obviously, supply and demand, you can ask whatever you want, my dad used to say, but it doesn't mean you're going to sell for what you're asking for. So you have to kind of see what the market is actually like, how many properties are being sold and what they're being sold for.
You bring up a good point right there because that one of the questions that we have received is, hey, it's 2025. Back right after COVID, land was selling like hotcakes.
Mhm.
You just couldn't keep it. So now in 2025, how long would it take for me to sell land? Or how long would it take for me to sell land by myself or going through a realtor?
Yeah, so land, I mean, there have been outlying cases where, it sold quick and once again, kind of like the neighbor down the road sold it for X amount of dollars. It's the same situation. Every case is different. If maybe you're selling your land and the neighbor has wanted to buy it for the last 20 years, so maybe he buys it the same day you list it. I mean, or you advertise it. I mean, there are cases like that, but they're very rare. With land, typically it takes a little bit longer. It's not as easy to get financing for land. Sometimes it's darn near impossible. So it's a lot more cash transactions, which makes a smaller buyer pool, particularly when the land is, more valuable, maybe six figures or more. So you don't have as many people. And usually land, as a general rule, I always tell people expect to wait a year. Bigger, higher priced farms can take a couple years to sell. Some of your cheaper properties can take, 6 months to sell, but in today's market, it's rarely going quicker than that. So just definitely be prepared to wait. It's not going to be a quick. And then even once you find a buyer and you sign an agreement with them and it goes to title, usually closing is like 45 to 60 days, sometimes longer if they have to get loan and they have to get an appraisal and coordinate all that kind of stuff. So it's not a real fast process to sell land, generally speaking.
Wow. So with the market changing, things taking longer, let's say I got a piece of land, I want to sell it. I'm not 100% sure I want to sell it on my own. I can't wait a year. I don't want to wait a year, whatever reason. I've called a couple of realtors. They're not wanting to work with me. They're dragging their feet. What other options do I have trying to sell my land?
Perfect. Yeah, it's a situation that happens a lot. And once again, I'll just reiterate, it depends on what you want to do with it and what you want out of it. So if you're wanting to get top market dollar for your land, you need to expect to do some improvements, invest some time and money into it, cleaning it up, making it nice and showable, having some trails on there clean so that, maybe finding a good broker or realtor. You're going to expect them to have it on the market for a year or more. And, they're going to have to take a four-wheeler out, a UTV side by side and drive clients around, show it to them, see if they like it or not. So, that, depending on what you're wanting, if you're not in a rush and you can do that and you can put some money into it, I would definitely recommend doing that route, especially with higher dollar properties if it already has a lot of improvements. But if you're looking to sell it and you're like, you know what, I've made the decision and I want to sell this, kind of something that you could consider if you just want a direct offer would be to work with a company like ours. So we're land buyers and our process is very simple. We're just investors. So we're going to look at the property, we're going to evaluate it. We're going to ask you a few questions about it, things like, do you have clear title, about the background of the property, whatever knowledge you have, and then we'll research it ourselves. If it's something that fits the bill of what we're looking for, to buy and hold on to as an investment, then we're going to make you just a real simple cash offer. And that's direct, that's cash. And then we sign a purchase agreement and we close through title. And typically we're buying stuff in like 30 to 40 days or less. So once we, sign an agreement, we're looking to buy it. It's kind of a simple solution. If you've decided that, you don't want to do that extra work, you definitely can follow the points we've discussed. But that's a simple way to get that. And if maybe you're just curious, you're like, I do want to sell. I've got some other things I want to put the money into because obviously funds parked in land don't really make you much money, because it's not an income producing property. Most of them aren't.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to reinvest that in something. The simplest thing I could suggest to people, James, is go to www.banalandcompany.com. I think we'll put that link in the description if you could. Banalandcompany.com. You can also email banalandcompany@gmail.com, and that'll reach out to our team. And it's going to ask you a couple property info questions, county, state, parcel number, etc. And then we'll follow up with you. And if your property looks like something that would work for us, we'll give you a cash offer. And, it's no pressure. You can take it or leave it, but that would be an option for people. A lot of people don't know that they can do that. They can just sell that direct. And in that, there's no middleman. There's not 7% that's going to, a broker somewhere. There's not a loan that might fall through after you get excited about getting the money. It's just a simple agreement and off the title and closed and done. So that's something that we're offering in 2025 to landowners. particularly in the states we're working. And if you're watching the video, I'd invite your viewers to check out the banalandcompany.com and just fill out the little form.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that, Jason. Thank you for your time tonight. And folks, if you've been wanting to know how can I sell my land in 2025, that's your answer right there. Go over the video, take some more notes, and please reach out to Jason and his team at banalandcompany.com and see if they might be able to help you and use them as a resource. So thank you all for
Absolutely.
being here tonight. And thank you, Jason.
Absolutely, James. And just in parting, I'd say, whether we buy the land or not, our goal is to serve. So feel free to reach out and we'll take a look at your property. No commitment, no pressure. And, if we can work out a deal. And if not, we'll give you some suggestions of what you can do with your property. So thanks so much.
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Jason.